Hello and welcome back to my channel, Civil War Reports. I am your War of the Rebellion reporter, Brian Thomas Kopak. And as I mentioned at the end of almost every episode, to please leave a question or a comment below, and perhaps I'll read it in a future episode of Civil War Reports. And I'm very pleased to announce that today is the first time I'm going to be answering some of your questions and replying to some of your comments that were left below. So, without any further ado, his first comment came from John, and it was at the end of the episode about the 5 results from the Battle of Antietam, or Sharpsburg, for the southern listener out there. And he writes, several writers advise that the fighting actually started in the late PM of the 16th. Do you agree with that? The Battle of Antietam was a one-day battle on September 17th, 1862. And yes, I have heard about this. I think it's written in Stephen Sears' book, Landscape Turned Red, that on the night of the 16th, McClellan pretty much moved part of his army, the 12th and 1st Corps, into position on the northern end of the battlefield up by the cornfield, which is where the battle would open up in the wee hours of the 17th. Yeah, I heard that there was some exchange of gunfire back and forth. This is not uncommon during the Civil War when two armies pretty much realized they were going to be shooting at each other the next day, that a major battle was going to take place, and that's activity is not considered part of the battle. There are accounts also on after the Battle of Gettysburg on July 4th of pickets exchanging some gunfire, but when it doesn't escalate into a full-scale engagement, it really doesn't count. So it's not considered part of the Battle of Antietam if this gunfire took place on the 16th. Just like any exchange of gunfire on July 4th doesn't really count as a day of battle for Battle of Gettysburg. But yes, I have heard of this. Also from John, please look into the strange disappearance of General Pickett's Gettysburg after battle report. This was a comment placed below the episode Wright's Brigade at Gettysburg. Yeah. A couple of years back, I took the exam for licensed battlefield tour guide at Gettysburg. Did well, but on my first attempt didn't make the cut. But there's still plenty of time in the future to do that again. And a number of the licensed battlefield tour guides who were conducting the classes did state that, yeah, Pickett did submit an after-action report, and his first one was pretty critical of Robert E. Lee and his decision to undertake Longstreet's assault or Pickett's charge. And Lee dismissed it and basically returned it to Pickett. I've heard that Pickett tried to resubmit it or submit a slightly different version. That also, if it was rejected. But yes, because his after-action report was extremely critical of Robert E. Lee's decision at Gettysburg, Lee just said, "No, here you go," and that was the end of that. The sad part is that, you know, Pickett did outlive Robert E. Lee by about 5 years. Lee dies in 1870 and Pickett dies in 1875. So there was time after the war to submit some sort of paper or article. I'm sure he would have been paid handsomely for it. But I guess maybe time healed some wounds, and he just didn't want to speak badly of Robert E. Lee, especially after Lee passed away. Very possible for that, because you got to remember, in the South, especially after Lee passes away, I mean, he dies about 5.5 years, almost to the day, after surrendering to Grant at Appomattox. Lee rises to godlike status, and it's very understandable. You know, Lee was really the embodiment of the South. Okay, this came from Clark in regard to Wright's Brigade at Gettysburg. Yes, Wright did break through. Read Chuck Teague's book, Master of the Field at Gettysburg. He includes plenty of info from other reports from the Federals. Also, got my copy some years ago at the Gettysburg Heritage Center. Okay, I'm going to embarrass myself and say I honestly never heard of this book, but I will be looking for it. Because as I mentioned in the video, as far as I'm concerned, the jury is still out. I don't believe there's enough information out there to determine whether or not Wright's brigade broke through. But this work here, this piece here by Chuck Teague, may be enough to tip my scales in favor that yes, Wright actually broke through. And I will admit again, I am a little embarrassed that I don't know this work, but I will be looking forward to add it to my personal library. In regard to the episode of Longstreet versus Early, John wrote, I like this. I like what he wrote. Longstreet was a prima donna and Early was a bully. It was natural for them to lock horns during and after the war. The fact you cannot determine when their feud began is telling, for it was no secret during the war, and Lee went to some pains to keep them apart. Assigning them to different corps and sending Early into the Shenandoah Valley are prime examples. Well put, well said. I'm not sure if there's anything I can add to that. I think you hit the nail on the head, especially with that opening sentence. Longstreet was a prima donna and Early was a bully. Great comment. Let's see. Also to that same episode, the facts, this was from MDR 6531. The facts of July 1st could be enough to start the feud. After that, it didn't take much to keep it going. Yeah, if there was no feud to begin with, the fact that Longstreet wanted to break off the engagement at Gettysburg and redeploy to a different position, and the fact that he didn't, and his corps did not engage in any fighting on July 1st versus Early, who did fighting on July 1st and was really gung-ho on continuing it, that could be enough there. You know, oh, this guy doesn't want to fight, but I'm full into it. That could have been enough, yeah, just to start the fight, the feud alone. KCC wrote, Longstreet was right, though. Look how Pickett's charge turned out. Yeah, it's another just great summary in one sentence. You know, in many ways, it was almost as if there was two Robert E. Lees during the Civil War. There was the Robert E. Lee who fought so well in Virginia, and then the Robert E. Lee who was here at Gettysburg. And, you know, he was such a great and brilliant Army commander. I'm sure I will probably do an episode or two at some point down the road, just looking at Lee's decisions here at Gettysburg. And it really, I guess, could be summed up with the fact that he did not have his eyes and ears with him on July 1st and the morning of July 2nd. I'm referring, of course, to Jeb Stuart and his cavalry. The fact that Lee had no one there that he really could trust. Now, he had cavalry, but he didn't have Jeb Stuart, and Jeb Stuart was his trusted eyes and ears. He did not have Jeb Stuart to reconnoiter the ground and get back to him with what Lee could hold on to as real good, firm, honest information. And, well, we know how it ended. Okay, this is also in regard to that same episode of Longstreet versus Jubal Early. Model Man wrote, a lot of people don't know just how close Early came to Washington, D.C. He's referring to Jubal Early's invasion of Maryland in 1864. During the siege of Petersburg, Lee was hoping to take some pressure off of the siege, and he sent his entire Second Corps under Jubal Early up into Maryland with the goal of probably trying to capture or at least really harass Washington, D.C. And a lot of people don't know about the invasion of 1864, partly because it wasn't a full-scale invasion of the entire Northern Army of Northern Virginia. It was just the Second Corps. But this is mentioned in that episode briefly. And Early got very close to Washington, D.C., but Grant got wind of what was going on, and he detached from Petersburg the 6th Corps and sent it up to Washington, D.C., to bolster the defenses there. And the old saying is, Early was late. He arrived just a little bit too late. He got there after the 6th Corps had arrived in Washington, D.C., and as a result, he starts to head back to Virginia. He does go into Pennsylvania. He burns Chambersburg. In fact, the city of Chambersburg commemorate that every year. And as he was retreating back into Virginia, that's when we have the really the end of the Shenandoah Valley fighting. He's really met with defeat, and the final battle really that ended any Confederate resistance in the Shenandoah Valley was in October of 1864 at the Battle of Cedar Creek. All of that, future episodes. Mark said, what a great channel, great info, more than I knew, thanks. Well, thank you, Mark, for your comment. I really do appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody who leaves comments, and I want to thank everybody in the future. Please, so far, all of the comments and questions have been family friendly. I hope it will stay that way, because I really hope that not only adults watch this channel, but also school kids, and get an education on the Civil War that they're probably not getting in schools. So thank you, everybody, for leaving what comments you do leave, and thank you for leaving them family friendly. I hope that will continue. Casey wrote, Pickett's charge was a total flop. Yeah. Again, what a great summary in one sentence. Total flop is an understatement. It was Lee's worst decision, and so many men on both sides suffered and died for an attempted military action that bore absolutely no fruit for the Southern cause. Robert wrote, thank you for providing this history and helping us understand that there were many very good people on both sides of the Civil War with different opinions, that the states have powers that the people of those states will stand behind. Thank you for that comment. Yes, you know, it's a civil war. These are Americans on both sides, both fighting for respective causes. And as I mentioned in these videos before, when it comes to states' rights, I really back the Southerners. You know, I like the fact that we have 50 individual states in this country. I like the fact that each state should have the power to decide what is best within the borders of those states. So again, I want to thank everybody who left a comment. Please continue to leave them. I really want to do more of these types of episodes. And again, thank everybody for, when you do leave a comment, please keep it family friendly. It's the best way to keep this channel going. I thank everybody who's watched an episode. I want to thank all my subscribers. Thank you. I'm hoping this channel will continue to grow. I'm hoping that I will in the future be able to travel to not only the battlefields within my area, but go to other places as well and report on the Civil War from areas outside of my normal driving zone. So, thank you again. I'm really enjoying the experience I have bringing these episodes to you. I really do. So, for Civil War Reports, I am your War of the Rebellion reporter, Brian Thomas Kopak. Thank you. Thank you for watching. And if you like what you saw today, please hit the subscribe button. Give a thumbs up. Also, notify your friends. Let them know about this channel and ask them to subscribe as well. If you like, you may leave a question or a comment below, and perhaps I will answer your question in a future episode of Civil War Reports. Until next time, please keep the history alive.